Today on the Phil Cooke podcast, we're going to talk about directing. You know, you see directing a lot in single camera projects on YouTube. You see multi-camera specials, particularly in the church world. You see worship events. You see church services. More and more churches are going on TV. And today I'm going to talk to Stephen Lester, who was a director for 9 years for Elevation Church, Stephen Furtick. He and I met in Washington, D.C. when I produced a project for the Museum of the Bible, and he directed it. It was an online, huge, massive live gala we did. And so I've been so impressed with his work that I thought today is the day I want to get him on the podcast and really talk about directing, particularly as it concerns churches, ministry organizations, nonprofits, both live streaming, both broadcast TV. We're going to cover everything today, and it's a fantastic conversation. So here's Steve Lester. Well, I am thrilled today to have Stephen Lester on our podcast. We met, what did we do, Steve? We met at the Museum of the Bible online virtual gala they had a couple of years ago. And you were directing, I was producing. I got to see you in action. And I thought, this is a guy I need to keep track of. This guy's going to go places. And here you are. First of all, thanks for being on.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. Actually, you want to know something funny? I met you when I was a college student, like 11 to 12 years ago at NRB, like way back when.
Whoa.
Yeah, me and my wife were talking about it today, that like the first time I met you, who was way back then. I mean, I was just a college student. There's like 20, 30 of us in a room. And I was like, oh, cool. Like this guy knows what he's talking about. So I'm honored and privileged to be like, 19-year-old Stephen would kind of be freaking out a little bit right now.
Well, I'm glad I wasn't a jerk or anything like that back in those days. That's good. That's good. You know, one of the reasons I think I connected with you so strongly is that when I grew up in the industry, when I came up, TV specials, multi-camera TV specials were the thing. Primetime television was filled with them. In fact, before I finished college, I'd been on crews that had shot primetime TV specials with people like Johnny Cash, Dionne Warwick, Robert Goulet, all kind of big stars of that era. And then along came YouTube, and it seems like we have a generation of young directors that grew up with single camera. And I go into churches and all kind of events around the country, and I meet young directors who have absolutely no idea what to do with more than one camera. They're just clueless. And so, but it does seem like that's going full circle. We're seeing more churches and ministry organizations get involved in multi-camera television. Some incredible stuff is happening out there. So it's just fun to meet somebody that is a generation behind me, but who grew up doing multi-camera TV and has gotten so good at it. It's so impressive. And so I'm just excited to have the talk with you today.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, because I would have said coming out of college, I thought I was going to be that single cam guy, like I've got to make a film and narrative. And then I got into the church world. I worked at Elevation for 9 years, and I just found myself like gravitating to multicam, like the chaos of like trying to figure out something live that I just was like, I'm a little bit of an adrenaline junkie in that sense. So like it just kind of naturally happened. And I looked up after 5 years, and I was like, oh, I'm kind of good at the multicam thing. And I can do the single cam thing. I'm not like, I would say I'm functional and I'm a decent director, but I love the multicam side. It's kind of the way God wired me.
Yeah, it's interesting that, you know, it's a skill set, because you're talking to 4, 6, 8, 10 or more camera operators at the same time. You've got an assistant director, technical director, lighting director, people that are all in the same headset line. And you're having a chat with everybody. Early in my career, I directed a lot of sports for ESPN, and I did basketball and boxing in Vegas, a lot of different things. And those, it can get absolutely crazy in those kind of environments, particularly when you're live. Now, I fought doing live TV for a long time. I thought, I want to fix it in post. But then once I started doing some live television, it's its own kind of a rush. And there's something to be said for fading to black and walking away at the end.
Yeah, I usually go off into a corner somewhere and get into the fetal position, because I'm like done. Like I don't want to talk to anybody. I'm like, hey, I've listened to every comment you've said for the last 2 hours. I'm just going to go off in a corner by myself.
Good plan. So let's go back to Steve Furtick, Elevation Church.
Yeah.
How did you connect with them to begin with?
So funny story. I had just graduated college, and like any college grad is looking for a job before they ask someone to marry them. And so I Looked around. I graduated from Middle Tennessee State on Murfreesboro, Tennessee, which is right next to Nashville. Was looking for jobs in Nashville, and I was sitting next to my girlfriend, who became my wife, but she was doing taxes, and I was frustrated because I was like, I can't find a job. So I just Craigslist like cities I wanted to live in and to find jobs, and I was like, oh, this church, Elevation Church, like this is in 2010. And I was like, oh, I think I know someone there. Like, oh, that'd be cool. And so I applied via Craigslist. They took a risk, and I guess I worked there for 9 years after that. So I was literally a Craigslist hire.
So you were literally involved in the growth of their television ministry. I mean, I don't know that they were doing much TV at all when you started there, right?
No, we had just started playing. They had just started playing with online church back then. The funny stories we always told was like there was an SDI cable from the back rack to the switcher that a lot of people and volunteers walked by and were like, "Hey, don't disconnect this because church will go down." So that's kind of where we started. Like to your point, like we hadn't done any TV. We hadn't done the worship ministry was just kind of starting. And I kind of got to see how God blessed that ministry and the leadership. And honestly, I was like baptized in fire, like just trying to figure it all out. And it was fun. Like I love, I don't work there anymore, but I talk to the team all the time and I love what's happening there. So
what would you say it is about Stephen, about the church, about the team, the leaders? What is it that makes them so good at what they do? Any ideas?
Yeah, I think Pastor Stephen is like an incredible visionary when it comes to like, okay, hey, this is where God's calling the church and pushing it forward. And I think he also believes in people, took a risk on a 22-year-old. And I just think God's blessed that faithfulness. And I mean, he has a drive that like honestly pushed me and has made me the creator that I am because as of his attention to detail. So I would say that, and I don't know, I think it's just the faithfulness of the way the church is structured and Chunks and Pastor and the team there. That's really kind of propelled it. I mean, you look at it and it's like only God, but I think God like use the leaders to help push that forward.
And the times I've spent with Stephen, you can tell he's pretty creatively driven guy. Yeah. He values creativity. And I think a lot of pastors don't do that very well.
Yeah, he does. You look at the songs he's written, like he's an extremely creative pastor and has like very specific tastes that as a creative you work with and you build upon.
So coming off the momentum at Elevation, now you're on your own, you're directing all kind of stuff with different clients and projects. What do you see as some of the big problems that a lot of churches have when it comes to multi-camera directing, producing their Sunday service, whether it's live stream or television? What are some of the problems you see with directors out there?
I might make some people mad here. I think we don't. I think sometimes we don't value volunteers enough in the process, and we kind of use volunteers as a scapegoat versus an ability to kind of raise our team and make really great stuff with team. I've used professionals, and I use professionals in the stuff that I do from a camera operating standpoint because I'm freelance, but. Some of my favorite experiences and honestly, some of the people that I work with now were volunteers when they started at Elevation, grew up in it and became really great at what they do. Like I'm thinking of two, like when I left, Chelsea Gribble, who is the director there now, it's one of the coolest moments. Like she was a volunteer while I was on staff. I hired her 3 or 4 years after she started volunteering and just to see her take the ministry. I mean, she's been very hands-on with making it better and the culture better. And just to see her, she was on a podcast with a couple of the guys that everybody loves in the multicam, but she was talking about like the way she captured and it was just like a proud moment for me. And she was like a volunteer. So like,
that's cool.
That's the things that I think I hear a lot. Like I work with a ton of churches, and I hear that a lot. Like, oh, we're just volunteer camera operators. And I'm like, well, elevation is 95%, if not 100%, most weekends volunteer, like other than the director position. And so I think instead of using that as a crutch, I think invest in people, love people well, show excellence. And I like, that's the church side. We can get into like, like the technical side, but that's a big thing.
Well, before we leave that topic, I totally agree with you. It's funny. There's a myth out there that churches like Elevation or Life Church or Hillsong or Lakewood, whatever, have all professional people that come in and they pay enormous salaries for camera operators and technical directors and people like that. But the truth is, in all those cases, I think people would be shocked at the number of volunteers they have. I had Jonathan Meisner, who's the director of digital experiences for Life Church, on this same podcast. He said the very same thing. He said they'd rather start them. Their attitude is, let's start with volunteers and raise up leaders. And people can do remarkable things. I've known plenty of people that started as a volunteer and now are freelance camera operators in their city. So people can get more out of it.
Yeah, there's a girl that I'm thinking of. Her name's Courtney at the church. Chelsea and Courtney are like two of my favorite people. Courtney was 12 or 13 when she started like volunteering in production, was running one of our main dollies by the time she was 16. It was on staff by 19, because as I feel like she had a gift. We saw it and people like Chelsea, people like Zach Cameron, like and me, like invested into it or into that gift. And now she's like an incredible director. Like people are asking her to do stuff. I mean, I work with a ton of professional crews, and the DP that I usually worked with, he's like, man, she's like one of the best dolly ops. Where did you find her? And I'm like, she was like 15, like in our ministry. So like it is cool. Wild. It's wild how we don't value that. Because it's hard. Like people are messy. Like that's the one thing I would say is, from a church standpoint, media directors and broadcast directors, we want to just be the technical guys or the technical women in like the guts and the of the actual technology. But in all reality, like we are called in that scenario to actually steward people, or find the person that you can partner with. Like I'm a big fan of this. Like find the partner or in crime, the project manager or the associate director that can help you build a great solid team that you can lead them well. But like, if you don't have really great social skills, first, it's probably an area you need to grow in. And then second, and like find the people that can support you throughout that process. Yeah, so.
That's great. All right. Well, let me put you on the spot with two other areas when it comes to church media like that I see a lot. One is, when churches start out in media, they usually have a tech guy running things because he's the only guy that can put it all together. Like you were talking about that cable, don't unplug that cable. Churches are at that level. And so, but as the church grows, in my experience, in my opinion, we need to move from the tech person being in charge to a producer being in charge. Somebody that's thinking more of the creative, somebody's thinking more of the message, the branding, the perception, those kind of things. And yet I find, I'm in meetings with 10,000 member churches that are launching TV or thinking about launching TV. And there's an engineer in charge of everything. And the pastor can't figure out why he's not connecting with this person. In one meeting, the pastor was concerned about his lighting. And, the engineer guy, he could tell him how many fixtures he had and how many lumens were on stage, but he had no concept of artistic uses of lighting. So number one, and this is no offense to technical people, because engineers and technical people are amazing and they're critically important. But when you see a television ministry or a video ministry, who should be in charge? Who should be the top person? A producer type, a technical type? What are your thoughts?
I am a huge fan of having some kind of creative leader, whether it's creative director or producer in charge of that department. But I think it comes with caveats. Like, I think they need to be a good leader. And sometimes I feel like, especially in the creative world, we feel like we have to be right. And in all reality, like that's not the goal. Like the goal of being a leader is not to be right. It's to actually create spaces for people to grow and do what they're really good at. Because I've seen, to your point, I have seen producers in charge of technical directors, and department is one of the most toxic environments because as the producer or the director needs to be in charge, and in reality what they need to do is lead. And I think that those are two very separate things that I think Elevation has done a really good job is putting those people in place. But I would say that's my big thing. It's like I do agree with you. A producer or someone that understands. This is the funny thing about multicam directing and technology. I'm going to say something that might be a little weird, but I think we're in the customer service industry. Like,
totally.
To be honest, like you're always, especially like for me from a freelancer standpoint, like I would love to tell you that I'm an incredible director and I have this artistic vision for this artist, but in all reality, my job is to come along people like Kari Jobe or any artist that I'm working with and say, okay, what's your vision? Yeah. Where do you feel like God's taking this? Okay, how can I bring my expertise, my art, and serve you well? And I think that that's like, to your point, from a technical standpoint, I think the technical people really want to serve well because they know that like technology matters, but they need either to grow in their communication skill or have that person in charge that allows them the space and the freedom to be the technical guru that they are and have the say at the table. Because I think that that's
absolutely
like to your point, like the guy that talks about lumens and he has valid opinions. Like if you're shooting at a preacher and you're like at an like 1.8 at 1600 ISO, like that's a problem. Like especially with volunteer or camera operators that aren't going to be able to follow focus. Like, yes, it's a creative choice because it's like you've got your bokeh and your depth of field, but there is some technical decisions you have to make. And that's where I would just say, I agree with you, producer up top, or a strong technical director that understands that, hey, it's not just about the gear, it's about serving people. Because as ultimately, I think that's what we do in this space is we serve our pastors, we serve artists, we serve whoever we're connecting with to actually achieve the goal as a ministry or a client.
It's funny that's a great point. I've directed clients over the years that particularly pastors or preachers of any kind who I think I know what they're going to do before they know what they're going to do. As far as moving on the stage or going here, going there, you just get into that wavelength and you start to project about you're having to have that camera ready for whatever could happen. So when you're serving people like that, you do really get into a mindset, which I think is critically important. One other situation I want your advice on, and that is a lot of churches will have a television crew and they'll have a video crew over here. And which means that it's two different departments. And so the video guys are there to do church videos and whatever, and then help the TV when they can. And then there's the TV crew. And what I find in those situations is the video guys, everybody wants to be on the video crew because they have more fun. They're doing small group resources. They're doing commercials and stuff like that. And they don't want to have anything to do with television. And I really think media at a church or ministry has to be unified. Everybody's going to be on the same team or it's not going to work, particularly when you think that television ministry is going to have an impact far greater than anything the church is doing just because of the impact it makes on television, online, and other places. But more than anything, we shouldn't have different media departments, I don't think, at a church. I want some sense of unification. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I don't know if I necessarily say that you don't need two departments. It just depends on workflow and like what you need to accomplish. I do think the keyword you use there is unity or like synergy within that. And I would say that that's key, even from a leadership standpoint. So if you don't own, I mean, this is one thing that Pastor Stephen did so well, and people that we like led the church was like, they were ruthless on making sure that everybody was synced up because Elevation was run and is still run to that degree of like, okay, there's a team that's handling programming and broadcast. And then there's other teams focusing on worship and creative. And there is, and at times that can create tension. But I think it goes back to A, are we serving the mission? And then B, and I don't do this all the time either, but like are we serving like our clients? And then are we being really clear on our communication on why we're doing certain things and bringing people along the journey? Because I think that to your point, like toxic relationships are the worst thing that you can have in a team, because it basically turns into us versus them, versus like, okay, let's actually move forward. Let's make great. Yeah. But to your point, like, I think media is changing a little bit because of churches like Elevation, Hillsong. And I would even say, like, in the mainstream standpoint, like what Vivo's doing from a multicam standpoint, there is a level, especially within music, that people are like, it's kind of gotten a revitalization, especially with the pandemic last year, of like, okay, how can we not just do these single piece cameras, but like do a big multicam shoot.
Capture experience. Yeah. I think that's good. All right. So let's talk about directing for a minute. You know, one of my big principles is, when I'm teaching directors, is cuts and dissolves to a director are like periods and commas to a writer. There's a place to use them and there's a place not to use them. And, you know, directing is not just randomly switching between a bunch of cameras whenever you want, or dissolving whenever you want. There's actually structure, there's principles, it's a visual language, just like a writer uses punctuation. Talk a little bit about how important that is to a director.
Yeah, I would honestly kind of put on there, like, the way you do camera movement and your camera, like dollies, zooms. I think everything serves a purpose. I am anti-dissolve. I'm sorry, Phil. Like, I hate, like, I can't, I've never figured it out. Like if it's the period or the comma, like,
it's a comma. It's a comma. Okay. It's a pause. It's a slow pause, you know, prayer time, maybe ministry time, maybe slow ballad. But I'll tell you, I will default to a cut almost all the time.
Yeah, I'm a cut all the way. Like, there's a running joke that I pick one or two things a year to kind of figure out how to use. And one of my guys that I work with really close, I was like, okay, this is the year I try to figure out some creative way to use a dissolve, because I have not figured it out yet. And so maybe I'll call you the next time I'm trying to figure that out.
I know I see churches all the time that dissolve all the time. That's all they do. And
yeah, I mean, even in the preaching, which is like to be honest, the worst thing you can do. Like, you're like, and I think that this, to your point, cutting, and you're kind of you're reinforcing the live aspect and the actual feeling that you're actually in the room, versus like a dissolve kind of takes you out of it, because you can't experience the world that way. Like, so that's where my head goes, is like, that's the reason why I lean towards a cut. And that's why you should never, I would say, never dissolve in a talking head or a preaching moment, unless you're going to black. Like, that makes no sense to me. But I think that especially when it comes to worship, which is like something that I love. To be honest, I feel like God's wired me to capture worship. I think there are really beautiful moments that you need to be static and really close up to a worship leader, because there's an emotion or there's an experience that God does. And there's sometimes that, like, it's just like a banger bridge and the drum guy is going crazy with his hair, and your camera needs to feel a little bit like Blair Witch Project, and it's fine. But it brings energy, it brings people in. And then the same thing with dollies and Steadicams. Like, I think sometimes as creatives, we are like, oh, give me all the toys. But we try to build like a massive, like, Lego castle with all these like toys, and it looks like crap afterwards, because we're like, oh, I had a Steadicam here and I had them rotate around the worship leader, and the worship leader doesn't know how to handle us. Like, it's a special service, and a worship leader doesn't know how to handle a camera in front of them. Like, that's where I would say, like, don't let the toys influence the way your creativity thinks. And go back to like, hey, you're serving. And Chad Vegas says this a lot, but like our job as like directors, especially within the church, and I would say as a freelance director that works with a lot of Christian artists, is like, I want the end user to feel like they can experience God through what I'm showing them. Yeah. And that might be a beautiful crowd shot every once in a while. It might be a really intimate moment where the worship leader's on their knees. Like that should serve everything, versus like oh, I've got this really cool idea for a shot.
Yeah.
And I'm that way. Like I love good oneers and one takes. I mean, at the Museum of the Bible, we were all talking about like, okay, can we do the Steadicam here? Like, I love that stuff. But if it doesn't serve the vision, then it's useless. Like,
so true.
It's like your job, especially in directing, I mean, should be like, oh man, especially in the church world, it should be like, man, didn't God move? Instead of like, oh, that was really cool video. Like, and I know that like for young filmmakers, and I guess I'm a young filmmaker, but I'm getting older. And I would say that that's the biggest thing that I feel like everybody talks about is like, oh, this is a creative, cool piece. And I'm like, great. How are you going to implement that to bring people further into worship?
That's good.
From a music standpoint.
So. I could not agree more. I've always felt like if you do a shot that's so cool, so amazing, people notice it, you failed as a director because you've distracted them from what the scene you're trying to capture. So whether it's a sermon or actors doing a scene or whatever, if your shot is so cool, people think, oh, that's a really cool shot. Well, you just distracted them from what you're actually trying to do. So you're exactly right. Toys are important, and I love toys, but I just feel like directors need to be able to defend what they do. I think it was Ernest Hemingway that told writers, first learn all the rules, then you can feel comfortable throwing them out the window. But you need to learn 100%. Them first. You need to know what's going on first. I think that's important.
Yeah, and I think know the rules and then know what you're going for. And if you fail, cool, you failed. And learn something from it. Like it's that's fine. True. Like true. Like, oh, I took that bad cut. Like I don't beat yourself up over it. Like I've done plenty of cool things in a worship experience and been like, oh, isn't that cool? Oh, and then I look back and like, no one talks about it. And so like, it's like, oh, like I'm working on some content for a client right now. And one of the pastors said, they were talking in the reference about preaching. And if we preach so that people can see me through my words versus seeing Jesus through what I'm doing, our motivation's wrong. And I would say that the same thing from a director standpoint, especially within in the context of doing this in a church and doing this as for God. Like I would say like, hey, your job is so that people can see Jesus, not like, hey, look at me. Like, I mean, I've directed a ton of stuff and I don't talk about it just because I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like ultimately God's got me, like God's blessed us along the way. So I would just say, hey, that on that front.
So let's talk about Imag Screens for a minute. You have a little different philosophy maybe than I do. I don't know. We'll see. Most big churches have Imag Screens on the sides. Do you send the same feed to those that you're sending to the public if you're doing a television or a live stream service? How do you view the difference in the main program cut versus what you're sending to Imag Screens?
Okay, so we do have a little bit, but after our different view on this, but I probably will preface this is we're probably very aligned on the sermon side and the worship side is different for me.
Yes, I agree.
I agree. For teaching and like, let's start there. I do think it's a different cut. I think that you do need a little bit more wide shots, especially in establishing the room, maybe some more dolly shots, more side angle stuff. But I think that in a room, your goal is to image magnify people so that they can see the pastor or see the content. So, at elevation, it's usually a one or we have 7 cameras and we've got our main tight shot. We've got a wide that sits on a dolly that usually shows the LED content above him. Also, Pastor Stephen runs across the stage. Like that's just kind of his thing. And you just don't want people to get car sick while a camera is trying to keep them on focus. Now they do that well, but you need a wide shot. And then we have 2 side angles that sometimes he loves to camp on the side of the stage. So it's a really beautiful shot because he's looking down at the camera because he's either looking towards Holly or a person there. And I just think you want to see their eyes versus just profile stuff. Worship, I say send the same feed because I think it creates energy within the room. Like that's my philosophy on that. It is just like we have visuals on LED screens or lighting to create dynamics. I think lighting, visuals, and then your Imag or your camera directing for worship really does bring a sense of like, oh, this is beautiful. Oh, and sometimes it's not the main worship leader that's the beautiful shot. It's the background vocals that is like weeping because are like they're experiencing God in a different way. And that's something that every like live recording I try to pray before. I know this sounds weird, but like it's funny because I've heard some of my team start doing it, but it's like, God, I open our eyes to what you're seeing and let us be able to capture it. And that's that's the goal in those moments, is to be very aware of what God's doing in the room, not just the main worship leader, because I think that's cool and all, but like those little moments that like, oh, there's a person over there. They're not crying, but you can tell that something's happening. Let's capture that. Like those are the little things that.
Well, I think we're on the same page. I usually tell people, look, if I'm in a church, particularly a bigger church, and I'm sitting in the back, I don't need a wide shot when the pastor. I see a wide shot from my chair. Yeah. What I'm looking for is emotion. I want to see his face. So I do believe that during the message, as much as possible, get the tight shot up there.
Yeah,
but you're right. Worship music doesn't make much sense if you're just shooting the close up or something like that. So I agree with you 100%. I usually put the music up there full on. And because it does build energy in the room and gets people excited, and they can see what's really happening in ways and angles they can't see from their chair. And then once the pastor starts, let's go in for the close up, because I think that does make a big difference. And I also don't see, when we talk about preaching, it's funny. I've been watching a lot of live streams. Although, during the COVID shutdown, every Sunday I'd go up to my office and I'd watch 10 or 15 different churches do live streaming. And I'm just stunned at the number of people that shot it all wide. I'm watching this pastor on my phone or my iPad or my computer in most cases. And I'm seeing a super wide shot. I watched one church that the shot was so wide. You saw the piano, you saw potted plants. I saw a coffee cup sitting off to the side of the stage. Meanwhile, all the emotion, all that connection is happening in a pastor's face. So I just tell directors, think, what are you trying to communicate here? Does seeing the empty coffee cup really matter? Or does it really matter what you're doing, what you're showing of the pastor? So I think that kind of stuff is just critical.
Yeah. Well, I would also say that tells me a lot about your volunteer health too, because what those guys would say is like, oh, we don't have the person to run that camera, so it stays wide. When I would argue like, man, then find the 16-year-old, because I've been to your point, our camera operators aren't good enough. Like they're not the guys at Elevation. I'm telling you, like there's a ton of volunteers at Elevation and they are not good at first, but it's just like if you work out, like it just becomes a better muscle. And so it's going to suck a little bit at the beginning, but like, it's better than just a wide shot. Like, to be honest with you,
totally.
Like there's a level of it. Like to your point, people will engage with the preacher or the minister, the worship leader more if you just try.
That's good. A lot of media people tell me the pastor doesn't have time for me. He doesn't talk to me. He doesn't bring me up for brainstorming ideas. I just don't have a connection with the pastor. Any tips for really making a stronger connection with the pastor, building that relationship?
Yeah, I would ask, how much are you listening? Like, I know that sounds like a platitude, but I mean, when I go back to like the client service side of things, like you got to look at the pastor like he's got a lot going on. Like he's not just us there to preach on Sundays. Most of the time that's like one of his main responsibilities, but he's also responsible for everything in the church. Like he's the CEO. So there's a level of stress and like weight that he has. And so your job as a video director or a broadcast director or an employee is to take weight, not to add weight. And so that's where I would just ask, okay, are you adding weight? Or are you taking away weight first? And then what questions are you asking? To kind of create really great conversations, because that's where I would say, there's twofold. Like, what questions are you asking? And if you haven't talked to your pastor in a while, sometimes I found while I was in the middle of it, and pastor would tell me this is a lot. Pastor Stephen would be like, sometimes the best compliment I can give you is like, I haven't said anything about the iMac because it's been so good. Like I don't have to worry about it.
That's great.
And like when you're projecting like what your pastor is or isn't doing, like that's an unhealthy place to live. Like, I mean, if I can encourage anybody, like make sure your relationship with Jesus is great. And then ask really great questions. And if you have an idea, build a treatment or build a deck and not just be like, hey, can I talk to you about an idea? That like, I can't tell you how many times that if we put a well-thoughtful or well-presented and thoughtful presentation in front of Pastor Stephen or any leadership within the church, or it got his attention or their attention because we cared about it. They saw that we spent the time versus like, hey, wouldn't this be a good idea if we brought a Steadicam in and spent 20 grand on a Steadicam? That just doesn't, it's not a good business case. Like, I do think that like as broadcast directors and technical directors, you have to be good at making strong business cases. Like, why is this so, like, why does this make the experience better? And then be like, you're in the client service business. I'm sorry, dude, or girl, like, I know that sucks, but it's the same thing that Chick-fil-A and Sonic and all these retail people are experiencing is like, you're ultimately there to provide a service for a client. Yeah. But it's ministry, and ministry, sometimes we view ministry as like, oh, there's like this super, I have to have this super personal connection. And I believe in that. Like, don't hear me wrong, but I think that in that context, you're there to serve and serve well, and then find the people that can like, I mean, I strongly believe in a strong community, a good mentor that's in the same space or above you, like that can speak into, because your pastor doesn't know what frame rate you're shooting in, and he probably doesn't care.
He doesn't care. Yes, absolutely. Totally. Yeah.
So talk to the guy, like the guy 10 years above you, and he'll be like, hey, you're worrying about that. Well, in all reality, it doesn't matter. Like, I think sometimes I feel like we need those people in our lives to just be like, hey, Stephen, I have my old creative pastor, Larry Hubaka, does this all the time. He's like, hey, that's a bad perspective. Like, you're just off. You shouldn't be mad. I mean, you can be mad, but it's kind of silly that you're mad. And I'm like, okay,
that's good. That makes sense. And I always encourage people, you speak the pastor's language. Don't make him speak your language. He doesn't care about Zoom links or focal links or anything else. He cares about mission. He cares about evangelism. He cares about church growth, and talk his language. And suddenly you'll have a guy with you. And also, I'm a big believer in be an idea person. Help the pastor, be an idea person, 100%. Be a resource. And suddenly you'll have more of his time than you probably want in some cases, because that's a good thing. Let me, one other thing I think that's important is very often I see churches that don't value the role of the director. I'm shocked over and over to go visit a church and find out, well, who is the director? And he's not the most experienced person. He or she isn't the most qualified person. It's often the lowest ranking volunteer because they can't find anybody else. Directors matter. I produce Super Bowl commercials. I've done television specials here in Hollywood, and the director is the highest paid guy on the set or the woman on the set. They're very, very valuable. And I would just love for churches to get a glimpse of just how critical the role of director is. You're picking the angles, the shots, the perspective, the lighting, all the ways that you're going to show that message or show that music and that worship experience. And I would encourage churches, think about that. Put somebody on behind that switcher that has some level of experience or is eager to learn, because it really, really makes a bigger difference than most people think.
Yeah, I think even that last statement you said, that are eager to learn, I don't think you need to hire Chad Vegas, me, or like all these like really up and coming great directors. But like, I do think you need to find someone that you're willing to invest in and that's hungry, and send them like once I found out that I loved multicam, I immediately went to YouTube and looked up Hamish Hamilton. Like that's like Hamish Hamilton does all the Super Bowl things and YouTube, and I loved his stuff, and so I just ate it up. And then I would say, especially from a leadership standpoint, I encourage your directors to do that, because you're right. Sometimes the director is the highest paid on set. Sometimes the director doesn't take any pay because they're like dreaming creativity. But to your point, they should be the highest paid.
Well, and let me, along your line about the YouTube thing, one of the ways I learned to direct was this Hollywood guy gave me this advice years and years and years ago, and that was watch with the sound turned off. He said, watch shows that you admire that has really solid directing, but turn the sound off, because that way you don't get caught up in the story. You suddenly start really looking at the angles and seeing the perspective and what the director's, when he's cutting. That's such a great idea. It worked for me.
Well, it's so true, because I would say, hey, to a degree, like we've talked about this a lot, especially in music, like there's a tendency to do it on beat or on a crash. And if you really watch the really great directors, like one of my favorite directors right now is Paul Dugdale, who does all Coldplay stuff. Like he just does everybody's stuff right now. But he cuts on motion, and it's such an interesting play. And he does a lot of post edit too. But when he does a live show, I see it even like it's kind of offbeat, but because the hand motion comes down, like those are the little things that you'll catch when sound's off. Or I also love just hearing, like there's so many people right now that are doing like your multi-viewer cam with the director's comm, and just to see how people talk to their volunteers or their camera operators. And I would argue that is more valuable than anything, because I work professionally in Nashville, and I can't tell you how many ACs and camera operators are like, thank you for not just like yelling at us the whole time, but like you, the way I describe it is, the conductor at an orchestra, like you can, you can tell at moments where they're like, okay, like this is it. And then they go into it, and they bring that energy along with the strings and the trumpets, and that's your job as a director, except no one gets to see you. So you yell, you use your voice. You're like, yeah, let's go. Like your job as a director is to find the right cuts, the speed and the pacing of like what your TD's doing, the types of shots, but you're also there. It's funny you say that the director is like one of the most important roles, but if you really put in context, the director has the least amount of control when the show happens. Like if a camera op wanted to go take a seat in the middle of it, there's nothing I could do. He would be on the next show, but like if all my camera operators just decided to take a coffee break, like I'm up a creek. Like there's nothing I can do. So I would say as a director, your job is especially with a long show, like especially with a lot of churches, like sometimes worship goes long or preaching's like an hour. Like your job is to manage energy. You're like managing flow, you're managing shots, but ultimately like you're a coach. Like you're like, okay, keep going. Like especially like we do a ton of live recordings that are 12 or 15 songs. Like I'm about to do a gospel recording this week, and I know it's going to be 3.5 hours long. And the operators are going to have to be up that long. And so my goal in that is to find strategic places that they can get rest, but then B, make sure that from an energy standpoint, they know I'm with them. And when we need to pick it up, like I will bring inflection and tone to actually help that. And so from a directing standpoint, I think that's why a director, to your point, is so important. You're leading the technical side of it or the visual side of it. And if you can find that kid in the background where he or she is like loving life, being behind a switcher over a comm, it's one of the best things you can do.
It is. And, your comment about when you mentioned camera people, it made me realize that I often think a church show, like a church program or a worship experience, even a concert event, is often what I consider a camera directed show. Because even though you come with a plan and you come with, ideas about what you want to do, you're sitting there behind 5, 6, 10 boxes, glass boxes, and all you can see is what the camera is showing you. Where they're in the room, they can see if someone's weeping. They can see if somebody's being moved here. They can see what's happening in the audience. So I'm always telling my directors, it's not a one-way conversation. I want to hear from my camera operators. Hey, I've got a great shot. I can do this. What if I get this? It's a conversation, not a monologue. So I would encourage 100%. Directors always have your camera operators talk to you about what's going on out there.
Well, and then that's where I would, especially from a freelance standpoint, because I do it professionally now. If I find a good camera operator that works well with me, I will move like heaven and earth to get them to work well, because like to the coach analogy, like my goal is to pick the team that I trust to run the lane. And I'm the quarterback or the coach on the sidelines just saying, okay, we're going to go this way. We're going to go that way. But to your point, like, that's where I would also encourage, if a camera director hasn't run a camera in the last year to 2 years, it's always a good muscle to flex.
Yeah.
Of just like, okay, like fatigue is a real thing. Like,
totally.
My eardrums are a real thing. Like all the chaos. Yeah. But I do think that, I don't know, I'm just an experiential learner with that. So
me too.
Like I will try to run camera every 8 months to a year, or so that the people I work with know I can actually do what I'm telling them to do. And then B, just to like get an experience of just like, okay, yeah, this is hard. Like, and just seeing different mindsets, like coaching things like, hey, camera operators, don't just live in your viewfinder. Like there's some beautiful stuff of like you shooting drums, like, you're kind of static. Look to your left, look to your right, back to your viewfinder, just like you would drive a car.
Totally
like
true.
It's that kind of like situational awareness that to me as a director is invaluable when it comes to camera ops.
I also encourage directors to edit every once in a while.
Yeah.
I started as an editor, so you start to learn what shots you need. I never walk away not having the shots I need in the can, because I know it's how it's going to fit together at the end. So, knowing a little bit about 100%. Everything, I think makes a big deal. So, okay. So what have we left out? If there was one last thought you could leave directors with, what do you think it would be?
We talked about a lot of things. I would just encourage, I think I've harped on this a lot, but I think sometimes, especially within the multicam side, I didn't harp on this a lot, but I don't think multicam directors are any less valuable than single cam directors. And there's that narrative within it's not even in the film industry. I think that it's a self-perceived narrative that we play from a video or a filmmaker standpoint, because I would say I fought the fact that God gave me a gift to be a great multicam director, because I thought I needed it to be a filmmaker. I needed to make narrative films and documentary films. But in all reality, multicam is still telling a story. It's still picking beautiful moments. And it's a form of documentary work, in the sense of like, okay, like, I guess it's music, it's cool, but there's also, I want to bring the audience into this emotional journey with the artist. And so I would just encourage anybody that's like struggling, like, oh, single cam, multicam, to your point, do it all and figure out like where your gifting is and what you love more. And it's okay. To do social, like it's okay as a filmmaker to do, like, if you're really good at the social media stuff, like some of my friends are incredible social media videographers and filmmakers because of the way they bring that stuff in. It's all right. You don't need to be Michael Bay or JJ Abrams or Paul Dugdale or Hamish Hamilton. Be you, where God's put you, and go from there.
That's great. So where do I see your stuff? Where can people go watch your stuff?
Yeah, I have Instagram, SJL Synergy on Instagram, and my website.
Say it again. Say it slowly.
Sorry. It's my Instagram is SJL Synergy. SYNERGY. And then I have a website, sjlester.tv, and I'm pretty responsive on direct messages, and I've got a contact form on the website if you want to chat. I'm always open to chat. And
you've just moved to Nashville. Tell me what's next for Steve Lester.
Yeah, we lived in Charlotte for 11 years because of the church. Loved it. Felt like God was calling us back because I do so much work with music artists up here. So what's next is I'm open to what God's doing here, and I love music, and so I will always be connected, whether it's music, multicam, marketing. Like I just love I have a passion for music and getting that stuff out. So I'm just going to keep plowing and find creative projects to either fund myself or partner with great artists to do it. So,
hey, man, thank you for being on. I just love your work. I love your attitude. I love your approach to directing and television in general. Thanks, and thank you so much for being a guest. I've just had a terrific time.
Yeah, thanks, Phil.
That was a fantastic conversation with Steve. He's an incredibly talented guy. I would encourage you to go to his website, see his work, reach out to him if you have any questions. He's just amazingly gracious, and he can offer you a lot of great suggestions on directing. And this is a reminder, my book, Maximize Your Influence, I'd encourage you to check it out. You can go online and get it from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, any of those sites, or go to influencematters.com. And for a donation to our nonprofit, the Influence Lab, to help train media professionals internationally, we'll send the book to you right away. So it's going to be a great reference for you. If you don't have it already, you need to understand about living in today's digital age. Believe me, it's changed everything. It's really important that you understand this. And I think this book would be a great starting point for any pastor, leader, executive who wants to understand how the digital world works. As often, hey, share this. If you have local church, ministry, nonprofit, other people that are pursuing directing, share this conversation with them. I think it would be fantastic and help them grow. Rate us, please. Subscribe. It'll make a big difference for us. And we, as always, really appreciate you being here, and we'll see you next time.